sports show. Mate, I'm nervous. I want to paint a picture.
A bit jumpy, yeah.
Bit nervous, actually.
Yep.
My first club I ever played for, under 12s, was Port Districts Footy Club.
Yep.
They came up to me and said, Greg, what number would you like to wear? And I said, there's only one number, number 17, because of the great Peter Woite. We got him in the studio.
Bingo.
We got him in the studio. Peter, welcome.
I don't know about
that. We'll go back to 1969 when it was your first year at the footy club. Do you remember whether it was Foss Williams or the chairman selectors said you're going to play this Saturday for your first game for Port Adelaide Footy Club?
Well, in the beginning of '69, I was in the senior trials.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I did a knee in the trials, so I had cartilage removed then. And came back about mid-season in the seconds, and then worked my way back in. And Foster told me that I'm going to be playing the following that week, and Big Bob McLean actually said to me, "You're going to play the next 3 games." So they wanted me to play, just didn't put me in for 1 game.
Yeah.
They were going to put me in for the 3 games, which was then the end of the season anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you know who that game was against, Pete? The first one?
The first one, I think it might have been Central Districts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Win? Did you have a
Yeah, beat that was a very bad year. We beat Central Districts, but it was a very bad year for Port Adelaide that year.
Right, yeah.
No finals. No finals.
Yeah.
So it was...
and Foss was tough as all the rumours, like...
Yeah. He was just the greatest coach you could ever have. I mean, he was so genuine. He wouldn't ask you to do anything he hadn't done himself. He set the standard. Everyone had the utmost respect for him, and he was fantastic. Some of his coaching methods, though, sometimes were not the greatest.
That's all I want to ask you, because you hear this myth. Yeah.
Well, the first time I really got to know Foss was if you were playing in the under 17s and under 19s, and you were the best player, your reward was to train with the A grade on the Tuesday night.
Fantastic.
So, unfortunately, when I won it, they'd lost on the Saturday. So I'd go out on the Tuesday night. And it's competitive training non-stop. But Foss would come up and introduce himself to you and have a chat to you before the training.
Yeah.
And then we went out and it was competition. Because I was the youngest there, they put me with Peter Fletcher, who was the youngest A grader at that time.
Yeah.
And it was just competition. So I got knocked out at the first time I went for the ball. So they took me downstairs into the rooms, and Teddy McMahon gave me some smelling salts and said, "Listen, son, you better get back out there."
Oh, really?
So out you go. Anyway, cut a long story short.
Brilliant.
Training the next night at the under 17s, under 19s, and the rest of my mates said, "What was it like?" I said, "Listen, don't be the best player if they lose."
Pete, you played in a terrific era, in an era with a fella called Russell Eden.
Yep.
And if you're going to win a BNF that guy's running around on the team, that's a pretty good year. 1975. Not only do you win the BNF, but you win the McGarry. When you got Russell Ebert running around on the team, that's a pretty good year, mate. Is it a year that you remember? I mean, you obviously remember it fondly, but it was a big year. It was a massive year.
There was a few peculiarities with that year. It was a short season, so we only played each other twice. And then we couldn't play at Albert and Oval.
That's right. We had to play at Adelaide Oval.
Adelaide Oval was our so-called home ground that year.
That's right.
Yeah, but to play with Russell was just unbelievable.
It was that good,
and that was a council bluff, wasn't it? That was a council issue.
Yeah.
I remember that. Fancy not being able to play at Albert.
Well, that's it. But anyway, we went on with it.
Yeah.
Obviously, your state record, 12 state games, that must have been a huge highlight of your career as well, representing South Australia.
Yeah, I remember my first state game. I'd only played about 8 SANFL games.
Yep.
And I was playing centre forward for Port Adelaide, and then they put me on the wing. And
I remember that.
My first opponent was Barry Burke, the captain of Melbourne, and Ray Huppich did me a great favour in that first quarter. He cleaned up Barry Burke, so off went Barry. The next guy I got was Francis Burke, the Richmond, and he was on for the next 2 quarters. And then I got Peter Bedford the last quarter,
brilliant
who I think won the
Brownlow, yeah.
And then, unbeknownst to me, because we'd lost to the VFL on Adelaide Oval, I think it was the first Adelaide Cup day, and So I went straight home. Unbeknownst to me, I won the TS O'Halloran Memorial Trophy. So he was the best player against the VFL. So I've gone home, and then I had to get back to Fort Largs before midnight because we were living in at Fort Largs. Yeah. So we had the big parade the next morning, and out comes the commandant and reads in the paper that I wasn't at the reception to receive the trophy. So he sort of told me I should have hung around.
You should have hung around. That's right.
You should have hung around. Now, mate, North Melbourne. This was I remember this story was so big that they gave you a little brown paper bag to sign on. There you go, mate, and it had some nice cash in it. You didn't go, and then they tried to get the money back. They tried to get it back, didn't they? The 10 grand. It never happened, did it?
No.
You didn't give it back?
The money that was given to me was for signing a Form 4, which meant back in those days that if you ever went to the VFL, you were tied to them.
3 years. Yeah.
So then it was up to them to convince me to go. Right, to actually go. So my wife and I went over there a couple of times, and we were shown everything, and they offered everything. But at the end of the day, they did sue me for the return of the money for the Form 4.
Pretty full on.
Yep. But the reason why we won that was because there were 3 contracts in place, getting better each time, and none of them signed. So in other words, when I'd signed the Form 4, I hadn't agreed to go. I just agreed to, and I was advised by Big Bomber Clean exactly what to do in that regard. So it wasn't.
And Pete, that was a lot of money in those days. That's a lot of cash. No wonder they went after you.
Yeah, and it was quite humorous, I should say, because Big Bob's told me if they're going to give you money, get it in cash because you can't trust the Victorians. And then so the North Melbourne chap that was doing the dealings went over to Port Adelaide, because I was an instructor at the police academy at that time. He went over to Port Adelaide to get the money, and you wouldn't believe he ran into Tim Evans as the teller.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
So Tim was asking me questions at training the following night. Yeah,
wow.
Amazing.
Wow. 77, a great year. 77, just must have been an unbelievable year.
Yeah, well, it was. Well, that's what you play footy for, isn't it? To win a premiership, and knowing what we'd gone through in '76 when we should have won. Yeah. So it was, that's what you play for. And I played in 3 losing grand finals, so to win one was just fantastic.
Plenty of celebrations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You were beaten in '76 by one bloke, though, really. And what a player.
Yeah.
Rick Davies, fantastic.
What a fantastic player he was.
And that's why we changed our ruck for the next year, and there was a big difference too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
You snuck over to Glenelg just for a season or two, so I think 79 and 80. Played over 20 games. Did you enjoy it? Was it a big difference as well from playing at Port Adelaide?
I had I'd retired.
Yep.
My knees were gone because I had my cartilages removed at 15 and 17, so I was really bone on bone my whole career. Wow. So I was a 10-year player, life player, playing life, and so I was happy I was going. Yeah. Right? That was it. And then Harry Kernahan came and saw me, and I told him exactly that. My knees are no good. Everything's He said, listen. He said, we can get you to 200 games, and you don't have to do the training you'd have to do at Alberton, and we'll play you centre half forward. So being a backman, of course, you thought this is an opportunity of a lifetime. But Big Bob said, look, we're not going to clear you until we have to at the end of June, because we don't want you playing against us. And so that's what happened. So I played half the season, that first at 79, the latter half, and then played the first half of 80 before the knees were totally gone, and that was it.
Got you 200.
Got you 200. South Australian Hall of Fame, 75 Bulgarian medalists, best and fairest 75 for Port Adelaide Football Club, greatest team of Port Adelaide of the century, a dozen state games, 200 games. Wow, I mean that's only part of it actually. So and then, now you can see why I was nervous.
Yeah, jumpy. Yeah,
and now you can see why I wanted number 17 as my Guernsey.
Yeah, well, good point. Yeah, Woite's jumper.
Love him as a player. Thank you so much for coming.
Good on you,
really
Pete. Great to see you, mate.
Absolutely brilliant.
And it's great to be talking with Port Adelaide.
We're back after the break.